Hi guys, welcome to the 5th episode of Blokes with Beards Talking Business. Today is the Cloud Accounting Special, and we've got a special guest, Tony Stevenson from FreeAgent Towers. He's going to introduce himself in a minute, but as the lawyer isn't here today, we'll quickly do a short disclaimer. Just remember, folks, this is not advice that we're giving you here. It's just general information. Don't act on it. If you do act on it and something goes wrong, it's not your fault. Good luck trying to sue me anyway. Anyway, so without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Tony. Let Tony introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into the questions. Tony.
Thank you, mate. I'm not sure I've ever been called a special guest before, so I'm going to take that one with the compliment that it was, I'm sure, intended. Just a quick intro on myself. So I started life as an accountant. So I spent the first 10 years of my career as a practicing accountant in various different forms. And then it will be 10 years very shortly in August that I moved over into the software world. So I have worked for a couple of the big cloud accounting software vendors, predominantly FreeAgent's. I've been at FreeAgent now for just coming up 6 years. My role at FreeAgent, my job title is Senior Digital Enablement Manager, which is long and ethereal and allows me to get involved in lots of different stuff. So I help with integrations. I have an implementation background predominantly, but I don't do a lot of that these days. Pre-sales, podcasting, thought leadership, that sort of stuff, and generally trying to bring my practice experience and insights into the world of FreeAgent that I currently work for. So that is kind of my potted history in a roundabout kind of way, but yeah.
Excellent. So you'll be in a fairly unique position because you've been round the block a wee bit. You'll be able to advise a lot of our clients. I mean, as you know, I'm a FreeAgent fan, acolyte, call it what you like. Evangelist, I wouldn't go that far. We also work with Xero, and that would be the extent of our cloud accounting usage. Dabbled with QuickBooks, dabbled with Sage Online and what have you, but just find them virtually impossible to get on with, really. Only Xero and FreeAgent seem to be the kind of user-friendly options, you know. Of course, because of the nature of my or Acumenica's client base, the makeup of that FreeAgent's pretty much perfect, you know. And you might want to maybe explain to us how the FreeAgent, the software, the package, the application, whatever we want to call it, is evolving kind of the same way that my client base is evolving. So it started off as a contractor product, but it's now moving out, but expanding into other business areas, isn't it?
Yeah. So if I wind back 17 years now to when FreeAgent started, long before I was at FreeAgent. Our three founders, Ed, Rowan and Ollie. So Rowan is the CEO now. He was the head of Chief Product Officer, and he's moved over into the CEO role. And Ed and Ollie left the business 2 years ago now, I think. So they were all three of them were kind of around for the vast majority of FreeAgent's life thus far. It started life as a contractor product, they went out to the market to try and find something they could keep the books on, and couldn't find anything. So they thought, you know what, we'll build it. So I think Ed was the sort of architect of it, and then they all came together and brought it to market. And it was very much focused on the contractor, the sort of one-man band. And over the years, as the features kind of deepened and richened, it sort of gradually sort of crept out of being just for one-person businesses, and sort of stretched out into being more suitable for sort of slightly larger, so the micro end, 0 to 5 employees maybe. So we tend to kind of gauge in that sort of employee number tends to be where the complexity starts to rise. And then as sort of time's gone by, that number's crept up a little bit. But like you said, Alan, we're never going to stray away from the sort of original roots of the product, which was to help, you know, freelancers and contractors and and small micro businesses to be able to keep their books but do it really simply. And that's probably why this evolution has taken time, is because we wanted to make sure that we want to make sure that everything is a really high bar of ease of use, and and obviously the ability to actually do the thing that you're trying to do, take that really, what is essentially a really complicated thing in bookkeeping, and turn it into something that's easy to do for someone that's not financially trained, but also to sort of make that process hard to break as well, because it's easy to do something wrong, and we try and always kind of build everything that we build with the lens of how can we make this nice and simple. So we're stretching now into the the small end of small as well. So that's the evolution that you're going to see, is from the 1 man to the 5 man to the 10 person to the 20 person business, that kind of realm. So yeah, that's where we're headed.
Certainly, we found that the big thing about Free Agent for us, and I'm careful that I said in the kind of intro and what have you, that we're not going to be biased towards Free Agent, but it's a kind of natural thing. I'm a Free Agent practice, you're a Free Agent employee, so we're probably going to end up talking more about Free Agent than maybe would suggest is fair. But we always find that when we get feedback from our clients, that the important thing, or something that comes up a lot, is that in Free Agent, again, I hasten to add, for our particular cohort of clients, there's nothing in Free Agent that's not needed.
Yes, yeah.
And there's nothing needed that's not in Free Agent. You know what I mean? It's kind of it kind of fits in. So and we've enjoyed watching the kind of the evolution of the product as well. And it is a good thing. We used to. There was often times when we would have clients that wouldn't fit, and we've had to go to zero or what have you, or no zero or what have you, zero. But this is becoming less of a thing now, because more people are suited to Free Agent, which is great. That having been said, there's still people that are kind of resistant to any kind of cloud accounting at all. And Darren, I'm not very sure whose contact is. I've just got Darren. He's asked the question, why is it important for me to have a cloud system rather than just keeping spreadsheets? So that's an easy one for you to answer, I would say, Tony.
We could probably go into that in quite some depth, but there's a bunch of reasons, right? So if you Google, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but essentially like spreadsheet disasters, there's some really good examples of like enormous companies that used spreadsheets for things, and there was a slight error in the spreadsheet, and and it's caused enormous financial distress to the organizations in question. So I'm going to assume that Darren's user level of Excel or spreadsheets is of the lower end, which is probably the most common. So I know that there are some people out there. I'll name check a guy, Dave Selleck, really interesting guy. What he can do with spreadsheets is quite astounding. And you would look at it and you would go, he's built an app, and actually it's not. It's just spreadsheets, and he's just knows how to make them look nice, knows how to make sure they're robust, right? So they do have a place.
Sorry, interrupt. I've got a contact, Richard Sumner. I don't know if Richard's listening. If you are, Richard, say hello. Who's very much the same. He can make Excel dance, like it's amazing what he can do.
I used to interact with this guy when I worked at Xero. So I used to work at Xero, a guy called Peter, and I can't remember his surname. And me and him had some fascinating chats about his job was Excel, and he used to help governments do their election counting and like all sorts of stuff all around the world. As an Excel ninja, essentially, was what we used to call him. And he just what he could do with it was incredible. But those are the exceptions at the normal end of the why can't I just keep a spreadsheet, right? So it's obviously dangerous because you can make errors in it, hopefully more easily than you can with a system that's that's closed down.
And the errors have got a tendency to compound as well, haven't they?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If you get one line wrong and keep rolling that spreadsheet forward each month or each year, then you can end up in a sticky situation. And I'm sure you've had that before, Alan, with clients that have come to you and said, we've been doing this and we found out that actually we've been doing it wrong for 6 years, and now the revenue want a bunch of money from us that we weren't expecting, and that can be fatal for small business, right? So there's that reason. Security is another one. So you can argue both ends of the stick, but we're owned by NatWest Bank. Our security levels have to be bank level security. So we would hope that a free-form spreadsheet on a computer somewhere would be slightly less secure than that. But the main thing I think is like, if you can imagine the problem of, right, okay, so let's say I'm a plumber, right? Let's use a plumber as an example, or even a contractor or whatever, and you've gone out and you've done some work, and then the workflow currently, if you use a spreadsheet, is right, okay, so I finished that work, okay, great, you might have paid me some sort of deposit up front, but probably not. That's fantastic, right? I'm going to go home now, or I'm going to try and take a payment on my card maybe. But if it's invoice work, I'm going to go home, and then at some point I'm going to sit down with my laptop, get my laptop out, create my invoices on Word, try and turn them into a PDF, and be frustrated that I haven't got the right Adobe license to do that, and then send them out, and then probably forget about them, with some bank details on there that are then out in the ether for people to pay you or not. If you imagine that workflow with a piece of cloud accounting sort of like system in the background, you can go out, do that work, and your client wants an invoice, so you can just sit on your mobile phone, create the invoice, and send it to them while you're sat there with a payment link, and they can jump on, make the payment, and you don't then have to worry about, oh, now I've got to have some method to go and find out what I sent and then go and chase it, because it'll chase it for you automatically if you set it up in that way. So and then there's also the collaboration with your accountant as well. So if you're using a spreadsheet and you've got that spreadsheet, and let's say that spreadsheet's perfect and you've nailed it and it's all locked down, there's no problems with it at all. And then you finish the year, and then your accountant's not like Alan, he's not proactive, right? Comes to you, you send that spreadsheet to him 1 month before the deadline for your accounts, 9 months after your year end, and then he processes it and comes back, and you've got to remember what you did 9 months and 12 months ago, because of what, I can't remember what that spend was at the beginning, didn't categorize it, didn't take a copy of the receipt or whatever, and then suddenly there's some issue that has come up out the back of those numbers. You're a long way behind where you could have taken some action to interact with that problem and maybe make it less painful, because it's much further down the track. So having your cloud accounting system in place allows you to interact as you go. That real time data, you can pull the information straight from the bank rather than having to kind of upload it manually. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around that, and around being able to do things kind of now and help to make decisions. Because if you want to buy some kit, you probably want to buy it now. You probably don't want to wait 9 months to find out whether you had the money now to buy it or not. So just off the top of my head, there's a few reasons as to why you might want to do it.
Yeah. So I've got another question from another client called Charles. I'm not even sure I want to ask this question. Basically, he's asking, I've got to paraphrase it. Basically, he's asking if you've got such a good cloud accounting system, such as FreeAgent or Xero, what's the point of having an accountant?
It's a fair question, right? It's a fair question, and if your accountant has yet to wow you with their input into what you're doing, then as a business, then I think that it is a fair question. There's a ton of reasons why you still need an accountant, even if you've got a really good bit of cloud accounting software, right? And it's actually quite a nice question, because I think it gives us the opportunity to extol the benefits of the profession, right? So ultimately,
you'd think I'd teed that up on purpose, wouldn't you?
I would, mate. Yeah, exactly. Like, ultimately, the way I see it is that if you're somebody that wants to take on doing your own books and filing your own accounts, then you could probably cobble your way to doing it if you've got a small and simple business, potentially. But what you're not having is any assurance that what you've done is right. So, Alan and Alan's team and, professional accountants have been through 3 years of rigorous training. They're required to keep up to date with their CPD. And they are insured to do the stuff right. So if something goes wrong, you can come back to them and say, this has gone wrong and it's your fault. So you've got some cover, right? If you don't use an accountant, then obviously that's not the case. And ultimately, there's a whole ton of proactive work that they can do around, things like, well, if you're breaking the boundaries of science, potentially there's R&D credits that you can claim, right? Which is not something that's like commonly held knowledge among folks, whether it's knowing you're able to do it or whether it is knowing you're able to do it or whether it's actually being able to do it is completely different things, right? How do you plan to exit your business, right? Your accountant will be able to help you with that, whether that's from a financial perspective or whether that's from a business coaching perspective. And if you're somebody that is aspirational and you want to grow your business and you need some insight into how to do that, then your accountant should be able to sit down with your numbers and go, right, okay, what you're planning to do, like here's some scenarios that we can play out. Ultimately, as good as the software is in helping you to get the repeatable basics done, you need to know accounting stuff to be able to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward from an accounting perspective, but also from a tax perspective as well, right? So even small businesses, sole practitioners can really benefit from having an accountant to make sure they're doing it right. If you want to take the work on yourself, Alan, you've probably got clients who do some of the work themselves, if not all of the work themselves, and you just check it, right, to make sure that it's right and that you've maximized all the allowances that you can claim, and you've put the things in the right boxes that need to go in the right boxes, right? So, we know that there are businesses out there that can do it themselves, right? And as I said, they can do it credibly, and that's great. But ultimately, the premium service comes from working with a professional who can, assure you that your work is correct, be insured to make sure it's right, and put your best foot forward in areas that are just, the yellow tax books, right? They're like this thick of rules of tax information that potentially could be applied to your situation to help you fairly and legally minimize the amount of tax that you owe to HMRC. So
I suppose it's also from the other side of things is why would you choose to spend your time doing your own books? From even if you can do it, do you want to do it? Is it a good use of your time? From my perspective, things that I can do that I choose not to do, such as DIY. My wife would probably argue that I can't actually do it, so because I'm pretty useless at it. But washing the car, cutting the grass, things like that, I sometimes get other people to do it because it's not a great use of my time and it's not an enjoyable use of my time. From a business perspective, I could be being more productive, and from a personal perspective, I could be doing something that I enjoy more. So there's always that.
It's a good example of like, if I prepare a slide deck, I know that I can do a credible job of it, but I know that if I give it to my design team who have trained and have the experience to make that slide deck look amazing, then they'll make that slide deck look amazing. And I'll look back at mine and go, oh mate, you're so bad at that, but you think you're actually quite good at it. It's like, you as a business owner, I can understand in the early days where you perhaps aren't ramped up to full capacity and you're not hiring people and that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's a false economy if you're an aspirational business. It's a false economy to do it yourself, because like Alan said, your zone of genius is highly unlikely to be bookkeeping and filing accounts if you're not trained in that manner.
Yeah. So we've actually got a real life example sitting up in the top left hand corner of the screen. Chris does his books on a spreadsheet. How dare he?
How dare he?
So.
Has that convinced you, Chris? Have you taken anything from my spielings and Alan's spielings?
And as he's sitting quietly, let's pile on him.
Well, it's opened my eyes a little bit. But to date, and I don't really have a horse in this race, because until I heard Alan say free agent the other day, I'd never heard of free agent, and I only know Zero from
the telly,
hearing other accounts talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, because my setup is I'm self-employed.
Yeah.
And I don't really have that many invoices. Once a month, I send an invoice off for the fees that I've accumulated through the parent company I operate through. So in my head, I'm just thinking, well, I'm not that complicated. All I'm doing is keeping a load of receipts, chucking them in a spreadsheet so I know my deductions for the end of the year. But I mean, how naive am I being? How many people are in my situation thinking, "Oh, this is a doddle. I don't need this." Is it aimed at me or is it not?
I mean, I would say, for me, the important thing is that. What's your financial year end, Chris?
It's lined with the tax year.
31st of March, 5th April. Do you know how much tax you're due to pay in July and next January?
Well, I did my tax return straight away, so I know
Right,
for the next one. Yeah.
Aye. Right. Okay. So.
But I think I'm rare in that one because I was just terrified.
Mm-hmm. But
let's pretend I didn't, because I think that suits the line of questioning a bit more.
Just a narrative better.
A lot of people don't.
Well, Chris, do you know how much tax you've got to pay in July and January coming up? No.
No.
Well, that's one of the good things about. I'm going to say it again. One of the good things, especially about Free Agent and possibly the others, but definitely no Zero, is there's a tax timeline. So Free Agent will automatically calculate your tax liabilities. Is it in the next 18 months, Tony, or does it go on? Can you scroll right through it, or is it basically?
It's a good question, actually. I think it's 18 months. Yeah, it will prompt you to remind you like when the due dates are, and if your books are up to date and correct, then it should give you a pretty accurate calculation of what they are.
Does it do it on an horizon basis? Because whilst I'm relatively, so say April ran in, and being a little, SWAT, teacher's pet, I stuck my tax return in straight away, so I knew how much tax I had for next year. Mm-hmm. But this year, I'm growing the business, so profits are growing, so I know it's going to be a bigger tax bill the year after. What I'm probably not as aware as I should be of is what I'm accumulating now. I'm putting some money to aside for tax, but
so what you'd be able to see in that so your spreadsheet, right? So I'm guessing your spreadsheet is a kind of a columns of like incomings and outgoings, and gives you some sort of idea about what that is within a cloud accounting product. And Free Agent does this, and the other ones do it in slightly differing ways, but what you should be able to do sort of as you go along is to be able to see kind of visually in reports, this is where I'm at the moment, this is how things are going, this is the trend on that particular line of income that I've got that I wanted to pull out. We've got a little tool within Free Agent that allows you to basically kind of like extrapolate out the next 3 months of cash flow as well. So if you're like, well, do you know what, got this big project coming up and it's a bit of a pinch point for us, but actually I hadn't really thought about it, you can sort of put it in as a kind of manual event, and it will show, I need to bomb 50k on this before I get paid. Am I going to be able to do that? And I can have a look at that now, rather than it kind of being something that will come up at the time. And then you're like, oh, actually, do you know what? Could have chased those invoices a bit harder, or asked for an advance, or gone to the bank and asked for, short-term finance to get over that kind of pinch point. So it does help you with all that kind of stuff. So it would be remiss of me not to mention that we're owned by NatWest. So if you have a NatWest Business Bank account, then you can have Free Agent for free. So if you open a Metal account, then you can have Free Agent for free. That syncs up, and then as your transactions come through, we've also got a little tool in it that you can sort of take a photo of the receipt, so that can see you sitting down of a Friday with a beer and the telly on, typing out the stuff into your spreadsheet. So you can just take a photo of it and pull the data off and push it through automatically into your spreadsheet, and you can hook it up to the bank, so it will pull the data through from the bank from your spending as well. So then if you've got a receipt, you can match it to that transaction, and then it's kept for you, because obviously you got to keep those receipts for for 6 or potentially even 20 years, it's useful to have kept them digitally, even if you stick them in a folder and bung them in a cupboard somewhere. Having them kept digitally as well is a useful way to approach. So there is a bunch of reasons why, and Free Agent's a really good tool for exactly your circumstance, Chris, that will help you to kind of be able to visualize what's going on, and maybe plan out a little bit what's coming. And then when you couple that in with an accountant, for example, that realization of like, now I need to grow. That's something you want to do in conjunction with, with your advisors, right? So that you can make sure that you are giving the right thought to. I'm sure you must have had it, Alan, before, where you. I'll give you an example from my time in practice, which I'll redact as best as I can to make sure that it's not. So we used to act for this client, and they were in the arts field, right? And they got gifted some money from an institution to go and pursue a certain avenue of exploration for their business. And we hadn't sort of spoken to them, and they hadn't told us that this was happening. And then when it came round to that conversation, the conversation was along the lines of, so, what happened in that circumstance? And their response was, oh, it's great, I put half of it in my pension. But that money had been given to them to explore this business opportunity. And obviously that is an extreme example, but it's a good example of why it's important to have those conversations now rather than further down the track, because there could have been things that could have adjusted slightly, which may have made your situation favourable further down the track, I would say.
Cool, makes sense. Do you? I don't know if this is within your gift, Tony. But do you have any insight as to how much time would be saved by being manual or using spreadsheets against free agent or cloud accounting? I mean, I know for my own kind of client base, but not doing anything scientific, that there's huge savings every week, month, or what have you. But has free agent done any studies into that? How much time is actually saved?
Yes, probably. I don't have those. I don't have those statistics to hand. What is probably a self-fulfilling proxy for that would be to look at some of the tasks that it can save you time on. Yep. And then if you're listening and you're in your own situation, you'll probably be able to work that out for yourself. So like, you raise one invoice a month, Chris, but you've got to sort of keep a track of that invoice, right, for what it's for. So you can kind of potentially build that up as you go along. We've got like a time tracking feature in FreeAgent's, so you can say, I did 6 days at this rate, or whatever it might be. If it's a fixed retainer, then it's a fixed retainer, right, and save you a great deal of time. You can set the invoice up on repeat, so it will just automatically send out if it is retained. You don't even have to touch it. It will just go at the end of every month without you having to touch it. And then if you're working for one institution, they probably pay you fairly regularly, right? But if you are a contractor that doesn't do that, doesn't have that situation, then chasing the invoices is often a pain, right? So you've got to keep track of where you've sent it and who you sent it to, and then go actually chase it yourself. FreeAgent's got like a little inbuilt tool into it that just will automatically chase it, and you can set it to kind of go, right, well, give them a gentle reminder after a week, and then send the boys round reminder after 3 weeks, and you can just keep automatically, and then as soon as it's paid and you match it up to the transaction in the bank, then it will just stop, which is nice. You probably have some exercise, depends how you work. Some people work from like the bank side, and they like to get their bank statement, put it in, and then kind of like work out where the receipts are and explain them that way. So that's kind of how cloud accounting works. So it's automatically hooks up to the bank, and then it just automatically pulls the amount of the data in from the bank, and then you can kind of go, oh, that was this, that was entertaining, that was marketing, that was whatever. Something else that's always one that sort of sticks out is mileage. All right, so you've probably got some sort of mileage that you do for your business, whether it's small, medium, or large. You can sort of set that up on repeat through FreeAgent, so it will claim the mileage for you, and then as you kind of work it out, it will, if you're VAT registered, it'll allow you to claim the VAT back on the mileage as well. This is a good example of something that people often miss from a business perspective. It'll allow you to do that. If you've got bills, we call an invoice, you've done some work, you want some money. A bill is somebody else has done something for you and wants some money from you. You can sort of set those up in FreeAgent, and then keep track of them if they're being maybe paid in installments or whatever it might be. So it will help you to manage that and keep that safe.
And if you line that, sorry, Tony, if you line that up with the likes of Dext, or auto entry or one of those things, guys, if you don't know what that is, that's like basically scanning your invoices, your bills rather. The Dext will scan those, extract information and post that information that you need to your accounting system.
Yeah.
If you do that, if you've got loads of bills, I mean, we've got a few 2 or 3 pubs, restaurants on our books, and they get ridiculous amounts of bills, and just dropping that into the scanner and letting that go through and then it posts it. Sorry, Tony, but these ones that we're talking about are zero, which probably works better for those kinds of business.
Yeah.
And that just saves, from our perspective, I would guess that would save a good 4 hours a month.
Yeah.
Maybe more than that, and if you're considering that the people that are doing that would have to be from if they were outsourcing it to us, then you would probably be talking about 75 quid an hour, something like that. So it's a fair saving financially as well,
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. And of course the bank hookup as well is great.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest time saver we find anyway,
What we quite often find, Chris, is that, and not wanting to give it too hard of a sales pitch because you crack right on with what you want to do, buddy. But what we quite often find is that folks will be in your situation and they've got a pretty tidy system and it works quite well. And then they'll move on to a cloud accounting system, try it, and they'll usually try it with like download the mobile app, invoices, maybe take a few pictures of receipts, and then something clicks and they go like, actually, I kind of didn't know I was missing this, but actually this is great because now that's sort of sitting down and typing stuff out and recasting your spreadsheet, and that's sort of slight niggle in the back of your mind as to what happens if my laptop breaks, that kind of stuff. Like that sort of all goes away, and then it just sort of sits there, and you can embed. There's tools out there. So Dext is one we integrate with, auto entry as well. Those ones Alan just mentioned that capture the data for you to a more sophisticated level than FreeAgent does. We also integrate with like payment providers like Go Cardless and Stripe, so that you can take payments and you can just set that payment link up, and you can set it up on automatic as well, so that it will automatically send the invoice and they'll automatically pay you, and you don't have to touch that process, and it'll automatically explain it in the bank for you as well. So there is sort of like, it's really not huge amounts of admin that you have to do each week or each month, but it can take that away and also kind of give you a bit more current insight as to where you sit. So there's a bunch of stuff in there. Alan, you touched on something that I think is an interesting avenue, and I'm sorry if I'm reading questions off your sheet, but I thought it would be useful in the interest of fairness to sort of delve into sort of where the different players in the market sit in terms of sizes of business. Because I think that at FreeAgent we certainly don't take the approach that FreeAgent is suitable for every business. It's definitely not, and we're more than happy to concede the bits that we're not comfortable with. So if you were to sort of map it out in the ideal world, you'd probably start with nothing, and then fairly quickly you'd move on to, as a small business, you'd move on to FreeAgent, and that would be the first step that you would take into the world of cloud accounting, certainly as we would see it at FreeAgent anyway. And it might be that your business is super complicated from the off, and actually, do you know what, you would want to jump then straight into zero, right? And that does happen, but for 99% of businesses, it depends on the statistics and the way you look at it, but somewhere between 95 and 99% of businesses in the UK fit within that 0 to 10 employee mold, right? So that's like a lot of businesses that are suitable for us, and there will be some in there that are, like I say, that are unnecessarily complex from a small place, and you probably want to jump into something slightly larger. But we would like to be in that situation. If you had the choice of, oh, this is brilliant, this is one thing that it doesn't quite do that I'd like it to, but actually I can manage that, versus there's way too much stuff in here and it's too complicated for me, we'd rather the former than the latter. So that what sort of happened over the time that the market has played out is that Xero and QuickBooks, who kind of, as we see it, sort of operate in that like the M of SME and the larger S of SME. They stole a really good march on the market with MTD for VAT coming in. That really kind of helped to align to those slightly more complicated businesses that have perhaps got a slightly larger transaction volume, or perhaps need slightly more complicated reporting. So one of the things that often will push them down that road is I need to be able to see the profit and loss from my fish and chip shop 1, fish and chip shop 2, fish and chip shop 3. So that sort of departmental thing. I might be speaking out of turn, but it is something that we're kind of looking at the moment, and hopefully that will come to life at some point in the future.
I feel,
but yeah, that's kind of how we sort of see it. Is that? Go on, Alan. Sorry.
So I know you're all right. In terms of, you're right that there's a kind of obvious demarcation between sizes of business, but yeah. I find that certainly, at least in our experience, we find that it's the types of businesses that we've got. As you know, most of our businesses are contractors, consultants, freelancers, tradesmen, etc., etc. So ultimately, people who raise an invoice for their service. We find that those types of business work a treat for on FreeAgent, or vice versa. FreeAgent works a treat for them. Whereas, say for example, you are a retailer where your money doesn't come in necessarily on an invoice basis, it comes in through a till or what have you, or if you carry stock, those types of businesses, for us anyway, I mean, we maybe just not figured it out properly, but I find those are best suited for zero. And obviously the other thing that I've had an issue with, and I told you when we were in Manchester the last time, is the weekly payroll. If we've got and that kind of goes hand in hand actually, because it's the people who are paid weekly tend to be in
construction,
in those kinds of businesses anyway, so they naturally just go and get shoved into zero. Whereas I would prefer to use FreeAgent for them because it just makes your internal processes that wee bit easier. So that fair perspective, that's how it works anyway. But also you'll find that we'll maybe have some clients that are moving over for another practice who are perfectly fitted or perfectly suited for FreeAgent, but their prior practice has them on zero. And then we find it's a wee bit clunky, because it's taking a hammer to crack a peanut. So we then try and move them over, but there's an awful lot of resistance because rightly or wrongly, zero have kind of cornered the marketing aspect, and most people that you speak to almost think it's a default,
Yeah, and that is something we come up against is a lot of it stems, I think, from the TV advertising as well. That's really a really expensive but useful way to put it in the hands of kind of Dave down the pub, right? So we can, as software vendors, we can tell businesses till they're blue in the face this is a good idea, and they resist it. And then when their mate Dave down the pub tells them that that this was a good idea, they go, "Oh, okay, brilliant." And there's it's interesting the way that the market has sort of grown and evolved over time. And I think that all we kind of ever ask is all we ever really want to see is just the right business on the right piece of software for them. As long as that happens, we're quite comfortable with that. But yeah, it is. Don't get me wrong. Zero's a great bit of kit, and it's a market leader for a reason. But it's got more in it than is needed for those sort of tinier businesses. So, and those simpler businesses, and and that's kind of as we sort of see it, particularly as we've kind of chipped away at some of those bits that needed to be improved in FreeAgent, and there's a whole ton of work that's gone in. Alan comes and sits in a room with us as one of our large partners, and we talk about how we're gonna do that. And it's nice in those rooms to be able to say, "But this is what you said to us last year, guys and girls, and this is what we've done, and this is what we're going to do next. What do you think?" We kick it around. Feedback's taken on board. There's always obviously an opportunity cost to building anything. If we build this, then there's something else that we aren't going to have the time or the resource to be able to build. But it definitely seems to be sort of gathering pace in that direction, which is nice to see.
I guess my final kind of fanboy comment then is going to just have to be about customer support on Free Agent as opposed to certainly Zero. That's the two that I've got experience of. Customer support on Zero. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but I don't know if we're getting special customer support because we're a platinum partnership. I believe not, but it's like night and day. You know, it's really impressive from a practice point of view, and also the kind of feedback the clients who've had to interact with customer support is the same. You know, it's great.
It seems to have become an accidental point of difference for us in the market. And when I say accidental, I don't mean from the efforts that we put in. I mean just the approaches that the other teams have taken. So there's a divide within the market as to do we allow telephone support or do we not allow telephone support? We have telephone support. I always have done and continue to use it. We supplement it with email. Is still the biggest route to support for Free Agent, but it's the reason we're able to deliver it at that level is because the product is so simple to use. It means that we get less queries about it than you do on average per head for these types of things, and therefore we got more time to be able to go into it, and we're able to support a phone number. You know, the user base has tripled in the time I've been at Free Agent, and might be speaking out of turn, but I don't think I am. I don't think the support team has tripled. And therefore there has to be something in that underlying that, which is that the tool is easier to use, and we get you know, we're able to solve those problems, and the support team I think we operate somewhere around 97% 5-star customer satisfaction from our feedback, and we go out regularly. You know, like every call there's a can you give us some feedback type email or correspondence that follows up, and you know, we're a modest bunch at Free Agent, but we do hear it again and again and again that the support thing is something that really kind of sets us apart in the marketplace for being able to spend that extra time and have that direct contact to be able to answer those queries and get to a resolution. So
interesting what you said there about an accidental point of difference. You know, I think any business that's worth its salt has got a point of difference, and you're right, a lot of the time it's accidental. I think you probably find that we're the same, and it's our kind of approachability and our willingness to call, as has happened, our willingness to call clients a fanny or stuff like that, you know, and it kind of sets people apart, and people seem to be quite happy about it. I don't know. But
you set your stall out on LinkedIn, right, Alan? You on a probably weekly basis say, look, if you want niceties, don't come to me.
Well, that's
if you want to have a crack and you know, if my team beats your team at the weekend, then you're going to hear about it, and you know, we'll get right into the weeds of everything. Then I'm your guy, kind of thing. So you know,
I spoke about this with I can't remember. I think it might have been the Digital Disruptors podcast I was on a couple of weeks ago. And I think I've got more freedom to speak to say what I want actually than other people who are kind of proscribed by their kind of their business or the company that they're employed with, sort of thing. Whereas, well, I didn't give a shit, you know. But anyway, listen, I think that's probably a good time to talk, a good time to end. I had hoped to touch on cash or card, because I know Tony's got involved in that argument in the last couple of days. But we've run out of time, so that might be for another
card. You got a one-word answer. Card.
Yeah, exactly. That might be for another episode.
It might be.
Unless there's any other questions in the chamber, Chris, I think we can probably wind this up.
No, I can't see any of the questions. You just got a bit of a fanboy in Lawrence, who says he's a first-time user, Free Agent, and he
thanks, Lawrence.
Alan's comments, user-friendly and no problems, which is pretty much the seal of approval that you want to hear, isn't it?
It's what I said, right?
I mean, and Lawrence is a client at Acumenica, and I mean, in some ways, that's the kind of dream team, isn't it? Free Agent and Acumenica.
There you go.
Can't expect anything other than that, those kind of comments and that with that kind of relationship, you know.
Yeah, I think It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it, actually. I've done a few of these types of things recently, and I need to do more of them. And I think that it's as much as I love the sound of my own voice, it's nice to be able to kind of kick things around an environment where you've got no distractions and it's just talk about the topic, right? So stuff always comes out when you think, oh, I hadn't really consciously thought of that before. So much appreciated having me on, gentlemen, and I shall be hopefully I'll come back on again in the future.
Perfect. Just one last comment there, because Oliver's asked, is Mark coming back? I mean, I'm assuming that's
I'm not replacing Mark.
I hope he's meaning bring back Mark. In fact, I don't know if I do hope that. I mean, I hope he's meaning Mark. Does they need to come back because you three were excellent? I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so he is coming back. He's in Turkey at the moment, unable to distinguish between peeled and unpeeled pistachio nuts, apparently. But another story. Anyway, guys, thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.